contrast with that corporate president in the White House who only associates with the guys who make $7,000 an hour. Do you know what $7,000 an hour compares with a $7 an hour wage? Here's what it is. By the end of the day, on Monday, 9 to 5, that executive has made more money than that worker in his company is going to make in 3 years and 4 months. Don't you think that's a nice thing to do? Is that pandering to those hard workers, telling them that we're going to give them a wage that they can live on, that they can sustain their family with the barest necessities while the corporations are making more profit and the economy is growing? What better time? Still, no breaking point? Let me level with you on this liberal intelligentsia, which has allowed for 25 years their Democratic Party to be broken down and pulled into hands of the corporatists, the Democratic Leadership Council. They have even brought members of the Black Caucus to their side, however the rhetoric may be. But let me just give you an illustration, and that is this. Health care. President Truman proposed universal health care. Nixon proposed health care that was better than Clinton's plan in 1993. Nixon, by the way, to show you the decay of our politics since Nixon. Nixon favored voting rights for members of residents of the District of Columbia. Nixon put up a drug bill that stressed rehabilitation, not incarceration. Nixon had a minimum income plan to start the ball rolling to abolish poverty. Nixon signed EPA. Nixon signed OSHA. Nixon signed the Product Safety Commission. You know, when you see what presidents have done since then, you can get downright nostalgic about Richard Nixon. Let me talk to the people whose burning issue is pro-choice. If both parties were dead set against choice for a woman, how long would it take before the pro-choice community would start a new party? Maybe 30 days? Huh? The head of Now in 1990, without even such provocation, spoke about the need for a third party to really represent the interests of women, not rhetorically, but by leveraging its power vis-a-vis the two parties. Let us assume, what if both parties were dead set against gun control? How long would it take before the opposite side to form their own entity? Let's say the two parties were dead set against the policy of the Israeli government on a Palestinian issue. How long would it take before the pro-Israeli lobby, which has worked so hard to be so effective as a citizen lobby, to form a third party? Well, let me show you. We have 30 issues of significant gravity that have been stiffed by both parties year after year, from corporate globalization to the slaughter and disease and workplace-connected trauma and sickness, something that's almost never discussed in public by the two parties. We have 30 major issues our groups have been working on, where the doors have closed down on them. 30 major subject matters where we can make this country so much better. 30 major subject matters that are supported by a majority of the American people, that are long overdue and are practical. So I hope that the single issue people will understand the level of provocation. But what is the breaking point? If you do not have a breaking point with the party that you are supporting, you will forever be indentured to the least worst magnet. You will have, figuratively, a ring in your nose, and the string will be pulled by the least worst party that has been told that they can take you for granted because you're not demanding anything from them. You know, there's a report out from Business Week today Here's the question. Whoever wins the election tomorrow, John Kerry, George W. Bush, there's one winner. And the answer was corporate America. That's Business Week magazine. The magazine that believes there's too much corporate power, that wants corporations to get out of politics. A courageous magazine which is completely funded by subscriptions and advertisement from corporate America. So the issue is not the differences between these two parties. The issue is, what is the difference between these two parties and the necessities of the American people and their children and grandchildren? The issue is not the differences between the two parties, but the differences between the Nader campaign platform, based on 40 years of fighting, not just rhetorically, of fighting for the health, safety, and economic interests of the American people. And now it's no longer possible to improve our country in Washington. It's corporate-occupied territory. It's over. Take it from me. I've worked agency and department after agency department. We have studied it, challenged it, sued it. We've worked with whistleblowers. We know these agencies. We know Congress. It's just about over unless we come back. And that's what this is designed to do, to lay the groundwork for a progressive movement in this country, as if people matter first and foremost. A progressive movement that enlists the time of millions of people who will break their routine slightly to give this movement grassroots support, so whoever it elects in the future, they'll never forget where they came from. And it doesn't take all that much work compared to what people do in their daily life. It's much more difficult to raise children. It's much more difficult to care for a sick grandparent. It's much more difficult to have to try to make ends meet compared to the time, talent, and energy that is possible with 2 or 3 million people to turn around the directions of our country. We should never exaggerate the amount of civic energy it takes to make significant change. I remember when I took on General Motors and hitchhiked to Washington to get General Motors federally regulated. You couldn't believe the laughter. What? Federally regulate the most powerful company in the world? I was determined to do it because I had the evidence and I had the energy and I could turn around faster than that elephantine corporation could. And the two statutes that were passed and signed by Lyndon Johnson, irregularly enforced, have saved well over 1 million American lives and millions of injuries prevented or reduced in severity. So the blasphemy of that time is now the commonplace. You know, airbags, collapsing steering columns, seat belts, it's all there, head restraints, so on. You take it for granted now. I remember we took on the tobacco industry. Oh, you can't do anything about the tobacco industry. Health groups, the Surgeon General's report, trial lawyers, investigative reporters, our groups. This is the most